Alright, folks, Rich Van Tassel finishing off the game recaps for today. Of course, you got the night game tonight, but as of right now, we're finishing off what was the 4 o'clock time slot. The Indianapolis Colts were eliminated from the playoffs with a 33-25 loss to the Oakland Raiders. Oakland is now 12-3. A lot will be determined tomorrow when the Kansas City Chiefs host the Denver Broncos. Of course, the Broncos cannot win the division. A loss by the Chiefs will wrap the division up for the Oakland Raiders. Andrew Luck, 19 of 29, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Frank Gore, 13 carries, 73 yards, 5.6 yards per rush. Robert Turbin, 6 for 18, 3 yards per rush. Andrew Luck, 4 for 12, 3 yards per rush, a rushing touchdown. The team altogether 24 of 103, 4.3 yards per rush, and the 1 touchdown. T.Y. Hilton, 4 receptions, 105 yards. That's a 26.3 average, with the longest only being 39, so he was clearly getting down the field on more than one occasion. Jack Doyle, 5 for 46. Eric Swoop, 1 of 45. Dante Moncrief, 2 for 30. Robert Turbin, 2 for 11. They had the 2 touchdowns. Frank Gore lost a fumble. They had 1 sack. Trent Cole, no interceptions. And Adam Vinatieri 1 for 1 in his field goals. The Oakland Raiders, Derek Carr, 20 of 30, 228 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Now Matt McGloin came in, 2 for 3, 29 yards. Gonna check real quick, see what happened. Yeah, Carr is injured, so we'll have to see how serious that is. It's a leg injury, so that's certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward. Could be potentially a long-term injury, and especially with this team going into the playoffs, that puts certainly a situation for the Oakland Raiders. You know, you got to figure out what they're going to do if they don't have Derek Carr, obviously. DeAndre Washington, top rusher, 12 for 99, 8.3 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Richard, 6 for 66, 11 yards per rush. Latavius Murray was held in check, 15 of 40. The team altogether 37 of 210, 5.7 yards per rush, however. Very good. That also includes the 3 kneel downs by McGloin for -3 yards. Michael Crabtree, top receiver, 7 of 90. Amari Cooper, 4 for 72. Andre Holmes, 3 for 33. Clive Walford, 2 for 20. Jalen Richard, 3 for 13. Holmes, Walford, and Richard all had the touchdowns. TJ Carey recovered a fumble. They had no sacks, so that's something I've noticed of late. While Indianapolis is not going to the playoffs, their offensive line had picked up their play. Just a little too late, though. Nate Allen, 1 interception. Reggie Nelson also had an interception, and Sebastian Janikowski did not attempt any field goals. So Oakland, obviously, a lot's going to have to be determined with the Derek Carr injury moving forward. Andrew Luck and the Colts, the offensive line play really killed them all season long. While we just said it came on of late, you know, for the first 13, 14 weeks, it's what really did them in, and that's why they'll be home for the playoffs. And of course, Oakland, as we said, they were able to run the ball well, though Latavius Murray was held in check. They're certainly going to have to get that going and rely on it heavily moving forward with the playoffs looming and Derek Carr potentially out. San Francisco getting the win, ending their 13-game losing streak, 22-21. They're 2-13. Both of their wins have come over the Rams, who dropped to 4-11. Colin Kaepernick, 28 of 38, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Carlos Hyde, 13 of 38, 2.9 yards per rush. Sean Drone, 10 of 17. Colin Kaepernick, 6 carries for 15 yards. He had a rush touchdown. The team, 29 of 2.4 yards per rush. Rod Streeter, top receiver, 6 for 63, 1 touchdown. Jeremy Curley, 5 for 62. Sean Drone, 6 for 48. Carlos Hyde, 3 of 15 with a touchdown. Carlos Hyde fumbled twice, lost one of them, recovered the other. They had 4 sacks. DeForest Buckner, who quietly put together a decent year, and Ahmad Brooks as well with sacks. Tremaine Brock, Rashad Robinson both had interceptions. No field goals attempted by Phil Dawson. I would believe that San Francisco went for 2 to win this game, which they did because it was 21-14 at one point. So hats off to them, a 2-13 team doing that to get the victory. I think this game just went final because there's not much coming across. Jared Goff, 11 of 24, 90 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Quarterback play, a disaster for the Rams this year. Ty Gurley, 23 of 67, 2.9 yards per rush, touchdown. Tavon Austin, 3 for 26, 8.7 yards per rush. He had a touchdown as well. Lance Kendricks, top receiver, 3 for 36. Ty Gurley, 3 for 20. Kenny Britt, 1 of 15. Morgan Fox, Mike Jordan recovered fumbles. Kenny Britt, Tavon Austin both fumbled, but they were not lost. They had 4 sacks. The Rams did. Eugene Sims, Dominique Easley, Aaron Donald, one of the better defensive tackles, and Blake Countess. Cody Davis had an interception, and no field goals attempted by the Rams either. So San Francisco, Colin Kaepernick, that is, not Carlos Hyde, Colin Kaepernick, when you look at the lack of wide receiver help and playmakers, I think that's certainly contributed to the poor numbers and obviously the poor record as well as Chip Kelly's play calling this season. But his numbers haven't been terrible. A lot of the controversy has been, of course, with his political stances. That's, certainly going to play into where he ends up next year if it's still with San Francisco. If it's not, I still think this guy has something to contribute in this league at bare minimum, a backup. As for the Rams, they've got to solve their quarterback situation. Jared Goff, of course, a rookie, hadn't made many starts. We'll see what he does moving forward. As I told you, the New Orleans Saints beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-24. Jameis Winston, Tampa Bay now drops to 8-7. They are really in desperate measures for the playoffs. They dropped to 8-7. This loss clinched a playoff spot for the New York Giants. Jameis Winston, 23 of 35, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jacquizz Rodgers, 15 for 63, running the ball, 4.2 yards per rush, 1 touchdown. Jameis Winston, 3 of 14. The team altogether, 21 of 89. Now, they benched Doug Martin before this game. I'm not sure exactly what the ins and outs were and the reasons why, but certainly the running game was affected by it, but they still went over 4 yards per carry. Mike Evans, 7 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. Russell Shepard, 3 for 61. Charles Sims, 4 for 30. 2 sacks, one of them by Clinton McDonald, the other Levante David, a very good middle linebacker. Roberto Aguayo, 1 for 1 in his field goals. For the Saints, Drew Brees, 23 of 34, 299 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, so certainly a good game there. Mark Ingram, 18 carries, 90 yards, 5 yards per rush, 2 touchdowns. Tim Hightower, 8 of 29, 3.6 yards per rush. The team, 31 of 123 altogether, 2 touchdowns. Brandon Cooks, top receiver, 5 for 98. Michael Thomas, 6 for 98. Kobe Fleener, 2 for 30. Tavares Cadet, 2 for 16. He had the only touchdown. Brandon Cooks fumbled. It was not lost. They had 2 sacks. Cameron Jordan, 1. Sheldon Rankins, the other. Jarius Byrd had 2 interceptions. Will Lutz, 3 for 3 in his field goal. So Tampa Bay, as I suspected, a team that was not able to go in there and get a not much needed, obviously, but an important win, a big game that they had. They could not come through. They could not come up with it, and it didn't surprise me. New Orleans played pretty well. Tampa Bay, though, I saw some of this game. It was on. They didn't look sharp at times. There were a few penalties. I saw Jameis Winston miss some passes. Now, I think some of the passes, like one I know was, for instance, the drive before, well, it was actually the last time they had the ball. It was a 3rd down. They were moving in for a touchdown. Now, he missed the guy like an underneath flat. They ran 2 receivers out. They had a guy coming in underneath to try to sneak into the end zone. He had a linebacker dropping off to cover, so he did have to throw it a little behind the guy, but he just completely missed it, so he completely overcompensated. It was just things like that, and it's not surprising for a team that is just not quite there on the cusp of competing. We'll have to see how that goes moving forward. As for New Orleans, you get a running game like this and the defense playing fairly well. They should be better. You don't know what's going to happen with Sean Payton, but there's certainly potential there if this team's defense could ever just figure out a way. The Arizona Cardinals beating the Seattle Seahawks 34-31 on a last-second field goal. Carson Palmer, 16-26, 284 yards, 1 touchdown. Larry Fitzgerald did throw a pass. It was incomplete. David Johnson, top rusher, 28 carries, 95 yards, 3.4 yards per rush. He did have 3 touchdowns, however. He was really the only runner. Carson Palmer had a negative 1-yard run. J.J. Nelson, 3 for 132, 44 yards per reception, 1 touchdown. There was an 80-yard reception, so after that, he's 2 for 52, but that's still 26 yards per, so he did well there. He was getting down the field. David Johnson, 4 for 41. Jermaine Gresham, 2 for 40. Calais Campbell recovered a fumble. David Johnson lost his fumble. They had 6 sacks, the Cardinals did. Now, a few of those were on run plays. I'm not sure if they put a sack. It was the read option with Russell Wilson. So I'm not sure if that put the numbers up just a bit. I only saw a few of those plays, but there were definitely at least 2 or 3 times I saw where they were tackling Russell Wilson in the backfield. If they didn't count those and they got 6 sacks on top of that, Seattle's offensive line, which seemed to have been playing better, is going to have to adjust going into the playoffs. And of course, Chandler Catanzaro 2 for 3 made his game-winning field goal. For the Seahawks, Russell Wilson 29 of 45, 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Russell Wilson was the top rusher, 10 for 36, 3.6 yards per rush. Alex Collins 7 of 28. Remember, Procise did not play. Thomas Rawls 8 carries for 8 yards. The team 27 of 78, 2.9 yards per rush. Not very good there. Doug Baldwin, top receiver, 13, 171, 1 touchdown. Jimmy Graham, 2 for 43. Paul Richardson, 4 for 42, with touchdowns as well. Jermaine Kearse had the other touchdown on 4 for 37. KJ Wright recovered a fumble. Russell Wilson lost a fumble. They had 1 sack. It was split between Michael Bennett and Jordan Reed. Or Jaron Reed. I was going to say the different Jordan Reed, but his name's Jaron. And Stephen Hauschka 1 for 2 in his field goals. He also missed an extra point, so you lose by 3, and there's 4 points right there. The extra point came right before Arizona went and scored the game-winning field goal. It would have put Seattle up 1. You can look at it as how big of a miss it was. You know, Arizona went back down and scored a touchdown, or scored a game-winning field goal, so they would have won regardless. As for the Seahawks, I don't think they came out sharp. They tried to come back in this game. They, of course, got it tied with the chance to take the lead, as we just said, but they have got to get their focus together as well as their running game. They've shown too many times where they're not all together. Even last year in the playoffs when they got run up on by the Carolina Panthers and couldn't come back. That's certainly something to keep an eye on. As for the Cardinals, they usually play the Seahawks well. Not a surprise here, so they get a little bit of redemption or whatever you want to call it for what has been a disappointing season. All right, so in a little bit, I'll give you the previews of tomorrow's games between the Steelers and Ravens and the Chiefs and Broncos. Be sure to stay tuned for that. And if I'm up, I'll give you a recap of tonight's game between the Bengals and the Houston Texans. We'll see you later, and have a good one.